I've been recording my dreams since 1979. And I seed my dreams. So I'll go to bed at night and I have an idea. I want some kind of an input on this issue that I'm wrestling with. So about 2 years ago, before I went to sleep, I said, I want to be able to distinguish between sin and evil. I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and in my mind I heard this, sin is the individual transgression of a culturally created precept. It's just breaking a human-made law. Whereas evil is a cosmic conspiracy using human intermediaries to separate souls from source. And so, in some senses, that's one aspect of evil, that when God creates holographic fractals of herself. So that I had this vision in September, just gone by last year. I had a fever. I had COVID, and whenever I get a fever, I have these visions. So when I was in Kenya, I got malaria at least once a year, and I'd have these extraordinary visions because of the fever.
Did you go out looking for mosquitoes just so you could have better visions?
When things were going slow.
Mosquito waska for you? Yeah.
Yeah. And so this last September, I had a COVID, and I had this extraordinary vision that originally there is only God, there is only source. But if there is only God, experiences are impossible. If there's nothing except God, God cannot experience. And so God self-fractures. And you've got the beautiful term in Hebrew for this, it's called netzvotzim, where God kind of divides herself up into these kind of fires or flames of the self. So in this vision, I could see that was the first act of manifestation. Now again, I don't believe in creation in the sense that creation, creatio ex nihilo, means God creates stuff out of nothing. So God goes into his workshop on a Monday and creates elephants, and he goes in on a Tuesday and creates mosquitoes. I don't believe that. I believe rather what Plotinus said, I don't believe in creatio ex nihilo. I don't believe in creation out of nothing. I believe in emanatio ab Deo, emanation from source, that everything that exists is actually a manifestation. It's like when I look at a tulip or a daffodil in the ground, there's this big ugly bulb, and then this green stalk comes up, and then this beautiful flower. So did the bulb create the stalk? No. Did the stalk create the flower? No. The essence of the bulb was to manifest at some stage as a stalk and eventually as a flower. So everything that exists is a manifestation of source. So that was the first thing I saw. Next thing I saw was these souls came into conference with God, with source, and said, let's do something fun. So the first project is, let's create a cosmos. So together with God, these fractals, these netzutzim, created the cosmos. And they're in awe of what they just created. And it's like the Buddhist notion of turiya, the witnessing consciousness. You're just watching this extraordinary creation, but you're not identified with it. And then there was a second conference that said, what would happen, if we could insert ourselves into the cosmos, if we could become living beings and experience it not as kind of observers from the outside, but as participants from the inside? It's what cultural anthropology will call participant observer. And Buddhism will call turiyatita, the ability to walk as a witness and also as a participant. I don't identify with the participant, but I'm doing the best I can as a participant. And so what I see then, in some senses, God decided to kind of indulge us and let us kind of have fun with our creativity. But at some stage, we built free will into the equation. Now, there's a big difference for me between free will and freedom. Free will is the ability to do as I please. Freedom is the ability to do as pleases God. Because freedom is the ability to always choose the loving, compassionate thing. And free will is to indulge, my own baser instincts if I want. So once free will is built into the equation, then we can choose to be selfish, greedy, violent, or whatever. And God says, okay, if that's what you want to experience, okay, see where it takes you, what happens. So in December 2012, I was down at the creek down here, Pina Creek. I go down there, Lawakela. And I go down there, and there's a guy sitting on the banks of the river. I've never seen anybody down there in 30 years. And I knew I was having an astral encounter with him. And he's sitting on the banks of the river with his feet dangling in, and he's chewing on a blade of grass, like an old hillbilly, from whatever, Ohio or someplace. And so I sit beside him, dangle my feet in the river, pluck a blade of grass, start chewing on it. And in my mind, I say to him, I wonder if he's going to tell me a story. And he turned to me, and without ever opening his mouth, mind to mind, he said, yeah, I will tell you a story. And he told me the following story. He said, I travel throughout the universe and my function is to seed life. And I've done it many, 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 many times. And we seed it, we water it, we weed it, we genetically modify it, and I can predict very accurately how every kind of planet is going to evolve until we build free will into the equation. And then all bets are off. At that stage, I can't predict where it's going to go. Because at that stage, we're on a spectrum between, I call it A Street and B Street. A Street is kind of self-indulgence and service to the self, complete service to the self. And we have to start there. Every little infant is a total narcissist. Otherwise, they wouldn't survive infancy. I need mother's breast. I need cuddling. I need warmth. I need conversation. But at some stage, we're supposed to move from service to self into service to other. The Mother Teresa's of the world, the Buddhas of the world, or the Jesus Christ of the world. But most of us get stuck, to service to self. And so when I'm stuck at that stage, I'm selfish, I'm self-engrossed, I'm envious of people who have what I want and I don't have it. And then I get greedy, and then I get avaricious, then I get angry, then I get violent, and then I start wars of various kinds. And now all the shit that we see in the world is because we refuse to move to compassion. And so for me, it's the question of, am I exercising my free will to make choices that move me into freedom? Or am I simply exercising my free will in order to kind of aggrandize myself? And this is true not just of individual people, it's true of entire cultures, or it's true of, organizations, like a religious group or an economic model or an educational system. And so the temptation always is, to kind of treat everything else and everybody else as merely resources, to be kind of exploited in some way. So that's one piece of it. Another piece of the problem for me is this, that there's a great astrophysicist called, what was his name? Nikolai Kardashev. You come across his work. He talked about typologies of civilization in the universe. And he identified 3 types. Now, I think actually there are 5 types. And he said a type 1 civilization is a civilization that's able to harvest its own planet, organically and ecologically to meet its own needs. So it can harvest the wind, the waves, volcanoes, tidal waves, hurricanes, all these, to meet its own energy needs. A type 2 is a civilization that can do that for its entire solar system. So if it were us, we'd be harvesting the sun, Jupiter, Pluto, etc. to meet our needs on Earth. But we would do it kind of ecologically. And a type 3 civilization is a civilization that can do that for an entire galaxy. Now, I think actually there are 2 more versions. I think there's a cosmic one, and I think there's a multiple universes that can harvest it. Now, imagine a very advanced civilization that's a type 3 with extraordinary technology, both mechanical and kind of mental technologies. But they're at the narcissistic stage of their own spiritual evolution, because scientific evolution does not necessarily mean moral kind of evolution. So if we had beings like that, they would regard us perhaps as just fodder. So I think that part of it is that there are beings out there who are technologically advanced, but they're feeding off human distress. In the same way that, get people having dogs fight each other and people putting bets in it, and murder the bastard. So they're literally feeding energetically off the distress of these 2 animals that are savaging each other. And that there may well be beings out there, advanced beings, who are feeding off the distress of human beings. So they foment wars and distress of all kinds. So that would be a second ingredient. A third ingredient for me would be, if you believe in evolution, and I'm not really convinced in Darwinian evolution, I believe in adaptation, but not that, that eventually a single cell morphs into a human being and become a dinosaur, and a mammal in the process. I think there's adaptation within species to changing circumstances. And so if you think, for instance, then in the evolutionary trajectory, if you buy into the Darwinian mode, then we've descended from apes. And you look at apes and chimps and whatever, and you look at their behavior, and they're extremely territorial, and they're really, really vicious and violent, and they murder each other. Different groups murder each other. So if there's some of that in our DNA, so that would be a third factor. So I look at the problem of evil then, and for me it's a multifactorial equation. I need to understand then, if given the gift of free will, do I also have the insight that I need to move from service to self to service to others, from kind of self-will to compassion, from free will to freedom. So that's part of the kind of equation for me. Yeah.
There's so much to talk about there. Let's back up to the man by the river. this was, if you reached out and touched him, he would have actually had flesh?
No.
No. So you just saw him in the vision
at the
space.
astral level.
It's
like a dream of the night. Within the dream, you're interacting with the other denizens of the dream, and they seem to be fleshly, and they're talking to you, whatever. But you know that it's being created at a different level of the kind of the spiritual hierarchy. But it's really real in the dream. Now, a vision for me, as I said in that piece I wrote, in the Hebrew language, dream and vision are synonyms. A dream is a vision you have when you're asleep, and a vision is a dream you're having when you're awake. And in the Hebrew scriptures, they're kind of interchangeable. So when you have Jacob having a dream, and then you have the angels ascending and descending on the ladder, that's a vision he had when he was asleep. But then you have other people, and they're wide awake and they're having visionary experiences. Maybe like Isaiah in the temple, 742 BCE. And so for me, they're totally interchangeable. And one is no less real than the other. It's just a question of the densification of the experience. Is it a 3D kind of dense kind of encounter, or is it a 5D kind of encounter where it's an astral reality, which is even more real than the physical, but not fleshly in any way? Yeah.
The shamans in Peru, who I've studied with and work with, they have a similar model where dreams, visions, and reality are all the same thing. So they could be telling you a story. I saw a jaguar, and whether they saw an actual jaguar, they dreamed of a jaguar, or they had a vision of a jaguar, it's the same thing to them. They really don't distinguish it. So it gets very confusing when people try to ask them these questions, because they just speak it as it was.